Hey everyone, it's Sarah and welcome to my crochet channel. Today's video I'm going to show you how to crochet my triple ripple throw blanket. I originally designed this back in I think 2013 or 2014, and I made it as a blanket to have out on my back deck for cool spring mornings and evenings so I could sit out there with my cup of coffee and be comfy. The pattern is stitched in repeating rows of 3 rows of triple and then a row of half double crochets, all stitched in a chevron style. This particular style doesn't leave any holes in the tops or bottoms of your stitches. And don't worry, I will show you exactly how to do that and also how to keep those edges nice and even. This particular blanket measures 35 inches across and about 55 inches long. That's why I'm calling it a throw blanket. It's not as big as a great big blanket. But if you want to adjust the size, the multiples and row counts, and of course the whole pattern with lots of new pictures is on my blog. And you can find that link down in the notes underneath this video. To make our triple ripple throw blanket, you're of course going to need some yarns. Now the original pattern I did a little bit different where I changed colors in the big striping areas. On this one I used a main color, and I was walking through Hobby Lobby and I found this beautiful yarn. It's called Cobblestonia. All right. Now, for the blanket, you're going to need a total of 35 ounces of yarn. If you're going to make it with a main color and striping your different colors, you're going to need 25 ounces or 5 skeins of your main color. And then you'll need 1 skein of your accent colors. All right, so it's kind of up to you how you want to stripe your blanket. The total amount needed is 35 ounces or 7 skeins of yarn. And that's if you make it according to the pattern that I have written. If you make it larger, of course, you're going to need more yarn. And if you make it smaller, you're going to need less. That's totally up to you. And that's why I added those extra multiples and row counts for you on the blog. We're going to be stitching today with a J hook. The J hook is a 6mm crochet hook. And we're going with a J hook because it's intended to be a little bit loose and airy as a throw, opposed to tight like a blanket. And I really love the way it works out with the J hook 6mm crochet hook. All right, then of course you're going to need your scissors and then a needle to weave in those ends. To make your throw according to what I have written, you're going to need to chain 84 chains. Now I'm not going to be making a complete blanket again. I'm going to make a swatch, and my swatch is going to have 28 chains. All right, so we'll begin with our slip knot, and you'll chain 84 chains. I'm going to chain 28 for my demonstration swatch. Once you have stitched your 84 chains, and again I'm doing 28 for our demonstration, we're going to put 2 wraps on our hook, and we're going to stitch a triple crochet stitch in the 5th chain from the hook. We don't count the loop on the hook. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we'll go in, pull up a loop. You'll have 4 loops on your hook. Yarn over, go through the first 2. Yarn over, go through the second 2. Yarn over and go through the third 2. Now this chain 4 counts as one triple crochet, And then here's our first triple. We're going to stitch 1 triple in the next 3. Two wraps, go in, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through the first 2, yarn over, go through the second 2, yarn over, and go through the third 2. So now, because I'm counting this chain 4 as 1 triple, I have 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so now in our next stitch, we're going to stitch, or in our next chain, of course a chain is a stitch, we're going to stitch 3 triple stitches in this one chain. So I've got my 2 loops on there. 1, 2, 3. So I have 5 individual triples and then 3 in that same stitch. Now we're going to stitch 5 triples, 1 in each of the next 5 chains. So 1, 2, 3, whoops, get in there. There's 4 and 5. And if you look at it, you can see we've already made our first chevron. 5 triples, 3 in the same stitch, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're going to do 3 triples together. So we've got 2 wraps. We're going to go in the next chain and pull up a loop. Now we'll go in the next chain and pull up a loop. Then we'll go in the next chain and pull up a loop. You'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 loops on your hook. You're going to yarn over and go through 1, 2, 3, 4 of those loops. Yarn over, go through the next 2. Yarn over and go through the last 2. So what we did here is we stitched 3 triple stitches together. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to stitch 1 triple, got to make sure I got 2 wraps on there, and the next 5 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, whoops, get in there. Maybe I made my chain a little bit tight. All right, so now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The next stitch we're going to stitch 3 triples together. One, 2, 3, and now we have 5 stitches left. So we'll stitch 1 triple in each of those 5. And then we're just going to chain 1. All right, so what we did was we began our triples in the 5th chain from the hook, and so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we stitched these 3 in the same chain, and then we stitched 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we stitched 3 triples together. And you'll continue to repeat this. You'll start over with the 5, the 3, and then the 5, until you get to the end, And then you'll have where you'll end with your 5, your 3, and your 5, working all the way across your row. All right, so just to repeat, we did triple in the 5th, and this chain 4 here counts as 1, so then we stitched 3 more, so we have 5. Then we stitched 3 together, not together, but in the same stitch, 1, 2, 3. Then we stitched 5 triples, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we stitched 3 triples together. 3 chains, but 1 triple. And that's what brings it in to form the bottom of our chevron. And you'll repeat this across your row. And if you're doing this according to the pattern, you're going to have a total, I have 2 chevrons here, but you're going to have a total of 6 sets of chevrons across your row. We chained 1, and now we're going to turn our work. And what we're going to do with the first 2 triples is stitch them together. It's similar to how we did the 3 together here, but we're only going to do 2 together. So we're going to put 2 wraps on our hook. We'll go in our first stitch and pull up a loop. Then we'll go our next stitch and pull up a loop. You'll have 5 loops on your hook. Yarn over and go through the first 3. Yarn over and go through the next 2. Yarn over and go through the last 2. So we've made 2 stitches into 1. Now we're going to stitch a triple in the next 4 stitches. 1, 2, 3, and 4. This is going to bring us to the center of those 3 stitches that we put in the same stitch. And we're going to stitch 3 triples in that center stitch. 1, 2, 3. So we have 5 because we stitched these 2 together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 3 in that center stitch of those 3 from the previous row. Now we're going to stitch 1 triple in the next 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so there's our first chevron on our second row. Now you'll notice that you'll have a triple, you'll have where we stitched those 3 together, and another triple. And we're going to do that again. So we're going to put 2 wraps. We're going to go in the top of this stitch and pull up a loop. We'll go in the top of the next stitch, pull up a loop, and we'll go in the next stitch and pull up a loop. You'll have again 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 loops on your hook. Yarn over and go through the first 4. Yarn over, go through the next 2. Yarn over and go through the next 2. Okay, and now what you're going to do is you're going to repeat this across until you reach that last chevron. All right, so you'll have 5 of them that look like this, and then you'll have your last chevron. And so what we'll do is stitch 1 triple in the next 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And again, this should bring you to the center stitch of those 3 that we stitched in that one chain down there. And so again, we're going to stitch 3 triples, in that same stitch. Then we're going to stitch 1 triple in the next 4. 1, 2, whoops, there we go, 3, and 4. And that leaves 2 stitches at the end of our row. And we're going to stitch those 2 together like we did at the beginning. So 2 wraps on your hook, go in the first stitch, pull up a loop, then we'll go in that last stitch, pull up a loop, and you'll have those 5 loops. Yarn over, go through the first 3, yarn over, go through the next 2, yarn over and go through the last 2, and chain 1. All right, so you're still going to have 6 chevrons across, okay? And you'll notice it's a very open and airy stitch, which is what I'm looking for on this pattern. That's why we're stitching triple stitches here. And again, 5, 3, 5, 3 together, and you'll repeat that across until you reach the last chevron, and you'll have 5, 3, and 5, because we stitched the last 2 and the first 2 together, and those 3 together at the end of each of our chevrons. And now for row 3, we're just going to repeat what we did on row 2. We chained 1 and turn. We're going to stitch our first 2 stitches together. Now we'll stitch 1 triple in the next 4. Now this will bring you to the center of those 3 triples, and we'll stitch 3 triples. 1, 2, 3. Now we'll stitch 1 triple in the next 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. Now we have 5. Here's my 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oops, I did 1 too many. There we go. Here's my 3 together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Always count. You don't want to have 1 too many like I almost did. That brings you to the middle here where we have the 3 that we did together. So we'll do 3 together again. We'll go in this one, pull up a loop, the next one, pull up a loop, the next one, pull up a loop, yarn over and go through 4 loops, yarn over and go through the next 2, yarn over and go through the next 2. All right, and then you'll repeat this, what we just did, until you reach that last chevron. And then you'll stitch 1 triple in the next 5. One, 2, 3, 4, 5. Brings me to the center of those 3 that we stitched in the same stitch, and then we'll stitch 3 triples in that stitch. 1, 2, and 3. That brings us to the end of our blanket. So we're going to stitch 1 triple in the next 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That leaves 2 stitches, and we'll stitch the last 2 together. We'll go in, pull up a loop, we'll go in that last stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through 3, yarn over, go through the last 2, or the next 2, and then yarn over and go through the last 2, and chain 1. All right, now I want you to look at this, because what you're going to see is that your edges are going to turn out nice and straight. By decreasing at the beginning and end of each row is how we keep our edges of our blanket nice and straight. Okay, so again we have 5 triples, 3 triples stitched in the same stitch, 5 triples, 3 stitched together, 5 triples, and again you're going to repeat this across your row until you reach your last chevron, and then we have 5 triples, 3 triples stitched in the same stitch, and 5 triples because we decreased here. What we're doing in the center of our, in between I should say, of our chevrons is stitching 3 together, and that brings that in to help form the chevron stitch. Now we're going to do row 4. When you get to the end of row 4, you don't want to do your chain 1 yet. We're going to cut our yarn. We're going to bring in our next color. If you want to. If you don't want to change colors here, you don't have to, but I like to because I think it makes that next row really pop. We're going to go ahead and chain 1 now that we changed colors. We're going to turn our work, and I am going to stitch over those 2 tails of yarn when I work this row. I'm going to get some more yarn out. This row, row 4, is a half double crochet row. All right, so we're going to yarn over. We are going to decrease. I'm going to move those strings so you can see what I'm doing. We're going to go in, pull up a loop, and go in and pull up a loop. Yarn over, and we're going to go through all 4 of those loops. So what we did there is we decreased and we stitched 2 triples into 1 half double crochet. Because this row we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to half double crochet. All right, I'm going to take that out, and I'm going to do it again because I want to stitch over my tails of yarn. But I did it that way so that you could see. So yarn over, go in the first stitch and pull up a loop. Then we'll go in the next stitch and pull up a loop. And I'm stitching over that yarn, yarn over, and go through all of those loops. All right, so now I'm going to stitch 1 half double crochet in these next 4 stitches. So yarn over, go in, pull up a loop, yarn over, and go through all 3 loops. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that brings us to the center of where we stitched those 3 triples. So we're going to stitch 3 half double crochets in the top of that center triple. 1, 2, 3. Now we're going to stitch 1 half double crochet in the next 5 triples. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have 5 half double crochets. We have 3 half double crochets in that center stitch of our 3 triples together. Then I stitched 5 half double crochets. So this brings us to those 3 stitches in the center or in between all of our chevrons. So yarn over, go in, pull up a loop, go in the next one, pull up a loop, and go in the next one and pull up a loop. You'll have 5 loops. You're going to yarn over and go through all 5 of those loops. So instead of stitching 3 triples together, we stitched 3 half double crochets together. Okay, and that's your repeat across your row for row 4 until you reach your last chevron. So now I'm going to half double crochet in the next 5 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That brings us to the center triple where we stitch those 3 triples in the same stitch, and we're going to stitch 3 half double crochets. 1, 2, 3. All right, now this is our last stitches on this row. So we're going to stitch 1 half double crochet in the next 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now we have 2 stitches left, and we're going to stitch those 2 half double crochets together. All right, so this particular row, I call it an accent row because you're just adding an extra color in there that sort of blends with the colors that we're using, or even if you're using solids. It's just an accent row of a different color and using your half double crochets instead of the triple stitches. The amount of stitches is the same, 5, 3, 5, stitching 3 together, 5, 3, 5, repeating this until you reach your last chevron, and then 5, 3, 5 at the end. So now we're going to cut our yarn. We're going to bring in our next color, which is back to our main color. Snug it down and chain 1. And turn our work. We will be stitching over these strands of yarn again. And I like to do that because I think it makes it easier when I come back in and weave those in. They're already hooked down in, and it just makes it easier. But I also want you to notice how the edge is nice and straight on our chevron. And this size here would make a nice scarf. All right, so now we're going to go back to stitching triple stitches, and we're going to do 3 rows just like we did here. So 2 wraps, we'll go in the first one, pull up a loop. Make sure we're going to stitch over those. So I'm going to go around those, go in the next one, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through the first 3, yarn over, go through the next 2, yarn over, and go through the last 2. Now we'll stitch 1 triple in the next 4. That brings us to the center where we stitch those 3 half double crochets. So we'll stitch 3 triples in the top of that half double crochet. 1, 2, 3. Then we'll stitch 1 triple in the next 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And that brings us to the center between our chevrons. Half double crochet, 3 half double crochets together, and 1 half double crochet. So we're going to go back to stitching our 3 triples together. Okay, and then we'll repeat this just like we've done down here, until we reach our last chevron, and then we'll stitch those 5 not half double crochets, 5 triple stitches. One, two, three, four, and here's my 5th. Whoops, want to make sure we got 2 wraps on there. There we go. All right, and that brings us to those 3 half double crochets, and we're going to stitch 3 triples in that center stitch. 1, 2, 3, and now we have the end of our side of our blanket, our row, and we're going to stitch 1 triple in the next 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we'll stitch the last 2 together. And chain 1. Oops, there we go. And that's pretty much the way the blanket works. You're going to do 3 rows of your triples, 1 row of half double crochet in a different color if you want to have an accent color, and then repeat 3 rows of triple, 1 row of half double crochet. And so if you're making the blanket the size that I'm making, that's a repeat of 48 rows, and you'll continue to repeat 3 rows of triple and 1 row of half double crochet over and over, and then you're going to end on a row of half double crochets. And if you're adding more rows to your blanket, make sure that you end on a half double crochet row. So here is the blanket that I've been working on, that is the actual blanket, and I wanted you to see the sides, how doing that decrease at the beginning and end makes a nice even side on your blanket. All right, so here's my last row. I did alternating with the sage green and the cranberry every other half double crochet row, and I do really like the way it turned out. It brings out the cranberry and the green in my afghan or my blanket. If I'd have had a color that matched with this, I might have done it every 3 rows, but the colors that I had on hand didn't blend with that, but I really like the way it turned out. Okay, so here's my last row of 3 triple rows, and I want to finish off, and I want to make sure that I end with a half double crochet row. All right, and I also wanted to show you that I have 6 chevrons. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. All right, so I'm going to end with this cranberry and finish off with a half double crochet row. So again, I'm going to stitch my first 2 stitches together. 1 and 2. There we go. And then I'll stitch a half double crochet in the next 4. That brings me to the center where I have those 3 stitches, and I'll stitch 3 half double crochets. 1, 2, 3, then 1 half double crochet in the next 5. So there's 2, 3, 4, 5. Let me bring this over. Here's those 3 stitches. Here's where I stitched my 3 triples together and my extra 2 triples on the ends. So we'll go in, 2, 3, and go through all those stitches. then 1 half double crochet in the next 5, and again that brings me to the center there, and I'll stitch 3 half double crochets. And so I'll continue to repeat this across my last row until I reach my last chevron. I've stitched across that last row my half double crochets. Here's my last chevron. Here's where I did 3 half double crochets together, and now I'm just going to stitch 1 half double crochet in the next 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. That brings me to the center triple of those 3, and I'll stitch 3 in there. 1, 2, 3 half double crochets, 1 half double crochet in the next 4, and then I'll stitch the last 2 stitches together. I'm going to go ahead and chain 1 just to hold that so I can clip my yarn. There we go, and I'll just tie that off. And I do have a little bit of tidying up to do with all my ends, but I will tell you that I do not put a trim on this throw. If you want to add a trim, I think it would be a good idea to add a half double crochet trim around it. It will help it hold its shape by adding that trim, but because I'm going to be using this out on the back porch, I'm not really worried about it. I think it's going to be nice being out there with this blanket. And so all I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back to all these places where I changed colors. You can see I stitched over that. And I'll just grab each tail of yarn and weave it in. And it's going to make it an easier job since I already stitched over it. Get that back on there. And what I like to do is I like to kind of come up a stitch and just go back, going through the stitches, and then just clip it. And by doing it this way, I rarely ever have an issue with my, if I can thread the needle, there we go. I rarely ever have an issue with my ends coming undone. And again, I just wanted to show you how nice and even that edge can be. And if you want to add a trim, a half double crochet trim is the perfect trim for this throw blanket. But like I said, I'm not going to add one. I like it just the way it is, and it's going to be perfect out on the deck when I'm sitting there with a hot cup of coffee in the early mornings enjoying the view.